Good evening from the Rain Dance Ranch. We're coming up on sunset time. The light's real nice right now, it looks like. And I'm real super stoked because I planted a tray of these petunias and one of them popped, and look at how pretty. I am so happy. I love it. Yeah. I'm very experienced with dealing with landscape plants for the desert, and that's where my focus has been most of my gardening life. And so I am starting a nursery and a plant start business, and so I'm just kind of experimenting to see what I can make happen and how fast I can, I need to figure out the timing and everything, and so I'm working on that. But I am also growing things like tomato starts and parsley, and I want to definitely start getting into food. I mean, I have been growing food, but I'm still an emerging gardener in that regard. But here's some baby's breath flowers. They're going to be pink. Super stoked about those. But what I really want to talk about today is my compost bin. So first I want to give a shout out to Old McWaller on YouTube for introducing me to this particular method of composting. So I call using an HDX 55-gallon bin with the yellow lid and with a bunch of holes in it. See, I've got holes sort of all over the top and all over the bottom, or the sides and the bottom. I want to give him cred for that, and I call it the McWaller method. But also I want to give a shout out to Robbie and Gary on YouTube, who also are big into using bins. And I had seen them before I moved to this property, and I thought, yeah, that's cool, I'll have to try that method. And I thought I was going to be doing little raised beds with like pieces of wood around the side, or lasagna on the ground. And no, that's just not going to happen, because I have a lot of rabbits and they eat everything. And I am going to start experimenting with some ground crops but I have to keep them protected from the rabbits. And then I'm going to invite the rabbits in and see what they don't eat. And then I'll know what I can plant in the ground. But I pretty much knew that I was going to need these bins to plant in, like these raised bins. I've got them up on 2x4s and blocks, and they're real nice. Here's some of the other ones. These are the ones I was planting in last spring. And I did have some bins that I left on the ground, but they had flowers in them that the bunnies weren't interested in. The bunnies love sunflowers and purslane. So just FYI. I had sunflowers in those bins along with some of the other sunflowers, and the sunflowers were demolished, but they left all the other flowers alone. So anyways, I wanted to thank them, but also David the Good has really brought me full circle. I've been watching him for the last year and a half, and I finally got his composting guide. The only reason I didn't get it before is because I don't have my actual computer hooked up, and my old phone just couldn't handle anything. Which, I'm like, oh, I'm not even gonna try anything on there. Like, there was no space for nothing, and it was just dying, and I could barely keep it charged. And I'm like, someday I'll sign up and download that or whatever. And so I got a new phone a couple months ago, and I finally was like, yeah, I really need to get that. So I just read it like less than an hour ago, and I'm like, oh, epiphany. So in his guide, he talks about, and again, cred to Robbie and Gary, because they said to do this, and I'm like, why haven't I taken that seriously? Where's the disconnect? What has happened to me? I usually cue right into the good stuff, right? I mean, we all think we do that, right? But I'm so thankful for all of you all. Anyways, if any of you all are watching this ever, and for anybody watching this now, I will leave links to their channels. But okay, David talked about one method that he has used in the past, where he has like a raised bed, the traditional raised bed that you think that's like maybe 12 feet long by 4 feet wide, maybe smaller proportions. And he would just throw in all of their kitchen scraps and yard waste. And I think he did say he would throw in chicken manure in there as well at the time. And that was just where they put their compost, was right there in a bed that they were going to be starting to utilize a year after they had spent all that time adding compost to. Hopefully that's not too long of an explanation. See, I don't know if you can see this. I just added some rainwater in there yesterday, and it's pretty condensed. I hadn't added water in this for a while, and then I just added more stuff in here. I have filled this thing up like 3 times, and then it degrades and goes way down, and people talk about that. It's like this, when you fill up a compost bin like this, if you fill it up like this from the beginning, when it's done composting, it'll be like probably less than half of this volume. And it seems like, geez, all that for just this little bit of compost. But I was getting ready I had stopped adding to this a couple months ago. I'm like, I'm going to add just a little bit more because I wanted to put in charcoal that was not charged, so that it would charge in the compost, and then I would have charcoal in my compost, which is just awesome for plants. Biochar, which I'm not going to get into the details about that in this video, but I really like the idea of making biochar directly in the compost, because I just don't have time to physically do things. And it's great to be able to make things quickly, but you have to tend to them, these things all the time. Like if you want to make quick compost or quick biochar, you have to do things. And it's easier just to put stuff in a bin and let it do its thing. And so this compost I started a year ago. Again, this is fresh stuff that I just put in a couple days ago. And it was a little on the dry side, and I had meant to put water in it at the time that I put the stuff in, so I finally did that yesterday. But it was relatively damp underneath, like a nice level of dampness, because we get a lot of rain. We've been getting a lot of rain, which is very unusual for us, and this thing has holes in it all over. And I think it's just the right amount of holes, at least for the amount of rain we've been getting. Woo! If you're in a place that gets a lot of rain, you probably won't, if you use this method, you won't have to add water to your compost, more than likely. But here in the desert, I mean, last year we went like a whole year without a drop of rain. So I was having to add water in the beginning. But I don't want to mess with it. I just want to put it in and let nature take its course. So I'm happy filling this up over the course of 6 months, 9 months, a year, letting it sit, and then using it letting it sit for another couple months and then using it. But the thing is, after reading David's compost guide, I'm like, the way I've done it is I've got aged mulch, and down below here is actual finished compost. Let me see if you might not be able to see it because the top is pretty kind of deep. Yeah, it pretty much looks pretty wood chippy in there close to the top. I don't, in another month and a half or so, I will be using all of this, and I may sift some of it out from, I'll try to dig some out from the bottom and sift it through, and then I'm going to try this compost in pots without adding soil, because they say that compost isn't like the same as soil, and I don't get it. Really, plants can grow in anything that is a growing medium. And I learned that from the bonsai people. This one bonsai guy, what is his name? Heron's Bonsai. I remember he's like, well, really, you could grow a plant or a tree in anything. All you need is a growing material. But yes, there are some that might be preferable to use, but technically, I mean, if you think about it, it's true. There's people that grow stuff in sand. There's people that grow stuff in, or they start stuff at least in sand, and they grow stuff just in water, and they just have to add the nutrients. It's just, what are you willing to do to get it to grow? So I'm going to try to plant in my compost that I have made without adding any store-bought like potting soil or anything, and just see how it does. But the other thing is whether I could just mix this up too and have some wood chips mixed in with that soil, and then use that as like a compost mulch. And so then the fine particles of compost that are in here that are totally done, have been in here for a year, will fall down to the ground. And then these wood chips will stay at the top, and they're already pretty well degraded. They're over a year old. And, they're making fungus, and there's life in these wood chips. And so they will then offer the moisture protection and continue to degrade in the ground under like my trees or around whatever plants I plant them in. So, none of the rules, like there's really the only reason why I'm waiting on this is for is for the charcoal. Well, plus I've got a million other things to do. Like I've got to do something about all these weeds. And then my weed whacker, it's technically Bermuda grass. If it was weeds, I probably would, that's easier to deal with. And I weed whacked a bunch of them around the yard, these sprays of these areas that got totally filled in with this Bermuda grass. I've gotten some other areas, but my weed whacker is wimpy, and the battery runs out on it really fast, and it's been hot, and we're just starting to cool off now, so I've got things like this to do. So I'm not, even if I hadn't added the charcoal in here, I would not be using this anytime soon, because I've just got so many other important things to do. But I do need to get some of my other beds ready here soon in the next week. But I'm gonna use the regular old Kellogg's from Home Depot in those other beds. And then I am going to be trying to make some quick biochar to put in those as well. But for my own, the way that I personally plan to utilize biochar is by adding it into these compost bins. And something like this, you'd probably want at 4 or 5 gallons of charcoal. And let me show you what I've got. And we're talking uncharged charcoal, because you're not supposed to use charcoal. So I keep my charcoal in. See, I put this in the bin. Here's my charcoal bits that I crush. I'm not supposed to be talking about this. But here's some ready to go. This is the stuff I want to, I want to do at least one more of these. So I have 2 gallons of charcoal crushed up. And then I'm going to soak it in tea. And then I'm going to put those in these beds over here with some Kellogg soil, because those need more soil in them. Anyways, and then I'm going to plant in them for the winter, and it's going to be great, and yay, and I'm happy. If you're new, hopefully you're probably going, what the hell is all this stuff she's talking about? If you're new to gardening. But anyways, I highly recommend that. I'm in love with the bin system. Now, again, you could do this just on the ground as well. And then when this stuff is, as you need it, you can just use it. You could get this compost and do some of the things that I was talking about doing with it. You just pull it out when you need it. Get a shovel and do what you want with it. But the other thing I like about these is that using the bins to compost in is, if I need compost way over there at the end of my yard, like where those cars are that don't run, they're not mine, they're my brother's. I let him use the yard for storage, and one day he brought over a car, and then he brought over another car, and he brought over an RV and another car. We have like, I'm like, well, that's kind of a lot of cars, Tim. But whatever, they're nice conversation pieces for now. So when I need that space, he can move those later. I don't know what I was talking about, where I left off, but I am not a professional at this kind of thing. But I just want to, you need to understand what's going on and how easy things can be. Like, you don't have to make things hard for yourself. So certainly in the beginning, maybe you want to try to make quick compost, and you want to be out making sure that it's hot and turning it and making sure it's wet and covering it just right and all that stuff. And you can have your compost in a month or 2 or 3. But I'm happy just filling this up and waiting and I don't want to be out here constantly watering and turning and checking the temperature and making sure that I have the right amount of nitrogen and carbon. I just throw in some scraps or anything nitrogen rich here and there, cuttings from the yard, whatever. Throw on some browns, and then some wood chips, and just let it go. I mean, I'm not even turning this. I just don't even bother anymore. And in the future, I may turn it a couple times just to kind of see what's going on in there, like with my next bin, because I'm probably going to get another one of these big ones. But I don't know, I might not. I was thinking I might just compost in these. And this year, starting like this week, because I have some of these bins are empty somewhere else. They're not out right now. These are going to be wicking beds. Maybe I'll even try it with a wicking bed. Like, with the wicking bed, you put like a layer of landscape fabric. I'm going to try it with canvas because I have some. And how good would it be to know that you don't have to use landscape fabric, that there's something else you can use? So I'm going to experiment with canvas, and then I can just put compost on top and water it I can do a wicking compost bin, and I just keep filling it up until it gets to the point where it's at least real close to the top. And I've let it compost for a couple months because there's going to be charcoal in there. So I'm not going to be planting in it right away. I want to let that charcoal charge for at least a couple months. Add some more stuff to it, and I may add a very small amount of actual soil on top. And maybe I'll do like soil on the canvas layer so that it kind of encourages wicking. I don't know how the wicking part's gonna go. It might work really good. But yeah, I mean, the idea is that I don't want to have to go and buy soil. So if I can use my compost as soil and actually maybe use very little bagged potting soil or none, then great. I'm going to just make my own soil from here on out. But again, if you're just getting started, it's really a good idea to buy some soil in the beginning. But the thing is, I'm a prepper. I'm a doomsday prepper, and there could come a day when you can't go to Home Depot. They might not let you in, or they just might not even be there at all anymore. I mean, I was watching a video with some people from Cuba, and the first time they saw a Home Depot, they were like, what? It's like going to Vegas or something for people that have never been to Vegas. If you're taken in by that kind of thing. I mean, Vegas is fun, but I'm not taken in by it, but it's fun. I mean, I love New York. I mean, I don't ride roller coasters anymore, but I have an appreciation for them, and I love the roller coaster. I think it's so cute. I thought they did a good job with it. I think it's so charming, and so I do like Las Vegas, and I really don't like gambling. It's not someplace I'm vying to go to, but it's a fun time. Anyways, Vegas probably won't be there someday. Because, someday we're going to be like the Cubans, and we won't even know that Home Depot ever even existed in the first place, probably, the way things are going right now. But, yeah, so we need to know how to make stuff happen from nature. Everything in here is basically free garbage. What everybody else right now in the world considers garbage is what's in my compost bin. So what you can do, and this is the epiphany, going back to David the Good, if I didn't make myself clear, if you could compost just like he did, right in your bed in the ground, and then at the end of the year you would use that bed to garden in. But he also mentioned, I want to add, that there's certain plants that actually like to grow in incomplete compost, and so those would be good plants to plant in your incomplete compost, like tomatoes, melons, and pumpkins that he has found are perfectly happy growing in unfinished compost. I think he said he found avocado trees. I'm still waiting for my avocado tree, and there's a lot of avocado pits in there. We'll see if I ever get one of those. So yeah, I am gonna compost in these bins. Now, like I said, I may do one in one of my wicking beds where it'll just be filled with compost. The other wicking beds I'm just gonna fill with regular soil. And then I'm just gonna, get some of these empties and turn like 3 of them into compost bins, and next year or in the spring or something, I don't know, I'll probably let them sit till the spring, because it's going to take me a while to add enough stuff, because I want to do it from kitchen scraps and stuff, yard waste and stuff, that I don't necessarily have all of that stuff ready to fill these things up right away. Now, if I could fill these all the way to the top with composting material and pack it in a little bit, put some more in, then it would probably be ready sooner. I'm just thinking there's like different ways that I could go about it, but yeah, and there's going to be charcoal in there, so it needs at least a couple months. And then I'm just going to plant right in there, and with adding nothing, just in the compost. If that works, this is what everybody needs to know about in the world. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that just have no interest in this, have no idea that they should know this. It's like brushing your teeth. Like, you really need to know that it's a good idea to brush your teeth. This is how you make soil so you can grow food when there's no grocery store or Home Depot. Hopefully, there won't be crazy marauder gangs coming after you. But, which reminds me, I knew a guy in Ukraine. Let's go back over to that flower. Or not, he wasn't in Ukraine, he was my next door neighbor, and he was from Ukraine. And he came over to America after the fall of the Soviet Union. And he was a relatively young man at the time. I think he might have been in his early 20s. And, he made a life for himself here. He had a asbestos removal business in New York, and then he got into real estate out here in the Phoenix area. And he did great. And he talked about the reason why he left the Ukraine was because of the mafia. They were basically forcing people to like join. They were conscripting the civilians into their mafia groups, and he said he would be forced to kill people, and he didn't want to do that. So that's what you get with communism. That's what it boils down to. All that stuff I was taught in the 80s growing up. I'm 50. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, and it was still full on, what did they call it? Cold War era at that time. And there was all kinds of like, be afraid of the communists, be afraid. And I used to think it was overblown. I don't think it was overblown. Unlike now. Anyways, so enjoy this beautiful flower. Learn how to make soil and grow food. And throw in some flowers too, because flowers are awesome. By the way, petunias are edible. All right. When it rains, go out and dance and have a great day. Have a great day.